All right, children, now welcome to follow Mrs. Colley down the center aisle off to We Worship. And a curly-head blonde down there, too. And as the kids are heading out, I think you're going to find today's topic is very important for us not to just consider ourselves when we consider the topic of doubt, as we're going to get into, but also the importance of being mindful of having good conversations with our children and bringing them to worship and being in the Word together and kind of knowing where they are, because having conversations about some of the difficult things in life is so important. And so often we're so busy doing so many things that we kind of lose track of things in the midst of everything else going on. Well, I got a chance this week to take a trip with my family, kind of take a break from things, and we headed off to the East Coast, and we spent a few days out in Shenandoah National Park, and spent a day out in D.C. as well. But this is a picture, actually, of one of the hikes that I went on with my kids. Actually, just two of them were with me, my 6-year-old and my 9-year-old. And it was funny because I'm taking this picture while at the same time I'm making sure my 6-year-old doesn't fall off a cliff, because you know, when you're a boy and then there's a cliff, of course you want to stand right on the edge, because why not? So it was this beautiful view, though, and it was this we had the same type of view from the place we were staying at, and that image, that picture, and as we kind of looked down in the valley, it reminded me very much of the experience of Lent and Easter, and then what it's like here at Shepherd Lakes every year. I love it. I've just come to just look forward to and embrace Lent and Easter season here, and the way it's become a huge part of our culture. And for both Pastor Miles and myself, that image is very similar to the way it looks in this church when we're standing up here. We got a beautiful view during Lent, when so many come to worship twice a week in many cases, and during Holy Week, it's packed in here, and we have our Good Friday services and Easter, and it's not. I'm not talking about the numbers. What I'm really talking about is how much we value what Christ has done for us. Recognizing that this is the central part of the Christian faith, that he died for us, but he didn't just die, he rose again. And that's the greatest news we can ever tell our children, remind ourselves on a daily basis. And from the mountaintop, oftentimes it's easy to see these things. But what's true about the mountaintop? You got to come down eventually, don't you? When I was in Shenandoah, this was one of the things that I discovered. It was really cool going up the mountain. It was fun, like seeing this. I enjoyed kind of going up like these steep roads. But on the way down, I wish I could have taken a picture, because it would have looked a lot like this. This is what I found online. If I had tried taking a picture of the way down, it would have my wife would have strangled me probably, because it would have put us in great danger. It was foggy. We were driving through clouds. There were deer darting out here and there all over the place. There were cliffs. There was tunnels that would come out of nowhere. And on top of it, too, I've always found myself looking at my gas gauge, because you had to come down off the mountain. It was a little distance, and I was on a quarter tank, so your brain's always playing games like, oh, we're going to run out of gas. And coming down the mountain was not as much fun as going up on top of the mountain and experiencing it. And in many ways, for me, this is symbolic of what it's like for us as a church post-Easter. And for us going to that mountaintop, we always have to come back off the mountaintop eventually and kind of experience life and get back into the day-to-day workings of everything. And for me, it was extra tough this year coming back. Usually when we go on vacation, I come back, I feel energized. It's been good to be away for a little bit, but it's good to come back and kind of get back into the swing of things. But this year it was way different, because I was nervous. I was feeling very emotional. It's been out on social media. I know many of you have already heard that I accepted a call to serve at a church in Ohio, and my last day is going to be in June 11th, actually. And this was a very, very difficult decision. And one of the reasons it was so hard for me to come back is because my family has grown to see you as family, and we love you so much. And it was hard to come back and see you after getting away, and then now you got to come back. And there's a great part of me that was fearful. And I know for many of you that for me, just sharing that's just kind of a microcosm of other things that are going on in this room. Because I know that for many of you, not only are you transitioning out of Easter, but many of you have been on vacation. Some are still on vacation. Some have kids that are graduating, different transitions in life. Some people are going through some difficult stuff right now, facing death itself, going through some really tough stuff. And that transition from the mountaintop to just every day can wear on us, and we can find ourselves looking around and scrambling and asking questions of God. And before we even realize it, doubt is starting to creep into our lives. And I've found that in my own life, doubts, struggles, hardships, those things kind of creep in without intentionally making those things happen. They just kind of happen. And for me, and that's what I want you to think about today is your own struggle with doubts. You see, when I grew up in the church, I went to church every Sunday. My dad was a pastor, as many of you know, and I heard many sermons I heard about Jesus on a regular basis, that I'm forgiven, that I'm loved. And one of the things that we didn't talk a ton about was doubt. Doubt was kind of one of those things that I just kind of knew was doubt's a bad thing, but we didn't really dig into it too much. And I think it's important for us to understand that while doubt is not something that should be encouraged, it's also not something that we should ignore or pretend that it's not there at all. When you look at the Bible, doubt is really kind of described in two different ways. There's doubts in the form of inquisitive doubt, like inquiries of God, questions, struggles, okay? I'm going through a difficult time right now, and so I'm trying to keep my eyes on Jesus, but I'm having a hard time, and I don't know how I'm going to do this, those kinds of doubts, okay? But then there's another form of doubt which is incredibly dangerous, which is kind of an unhinged form of doubt, like a detached form of doubt where we detach our trust really in God entirely, where we just kind of abandon Jesus, set our eyes on everything else. And this is really what brought sin into the world. The first human beings were tempted by Satan. Did God actually say that you shouldn't eat from that fruit of the tree? Is God's design for your life actually good? And the first humans were like, you know what? Why am I trusting him? How do I know that he actually knows what's good for me? And does God really love me? And that's what happened. Their faith got detached from God entirely. They denied God. They pushed him out of their lives because of their doubt. And sin has been brought into the world, and we all suffer from that disease today. And that doubt is described in James chapter 6, verse 1 in this way. It says, one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the waves, tossed by the wind. And I think it's important to acknowledge that when we lose sight of Jesus, and when there's no solid ground that we're standing on, we get battered and we get thrown all over the place by our circumstances, by our emotions, by everything else. It's so easy to be tossed around. And that's the kind of doubt that we're constantly warned against. And it's even more dangerous in this world, because in this world today, the world that you live in, the world that your children are growing up in, your grandchildren are growing up in many ways, doubt is in many ways considered to be a virtue. It's virtuous. Do you understand? So to believe, to have convictions about what is true and to stand by that truth and to say Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, well, that's just arrogant. But to say things like, well, that's your truth, that's okay, and well, God can take on many forms, many different religions, and maybe that, I don't know, maybe that's true, maybe that's not. That's considered to be humble. You see what I'm saying? Doubt itself is almost built up as this virtuous thing in our modern world, and it's dangerous. And it's dangerous because as we struggle with questions, as we struggle with being tossed around sometimes by life, little things, little doubts, if they're not addressed, can quickly multiply. And those little doubts that multiply can quickly turn into this form of doubt that James is talking about, where we're completely detached from God and we deny any need for God himself. And we never darken a church again, and we never open up a Bible again because it's all up to me. And I think what's encouraging in all of this, recognizing that doubt is a reality in the different forms that it takes, it's encouraging to know that we're not alone. We're not alone in our struggles. That's what you get in our scripture today. You hear about Jesus' disciple Thomas. Actually, before what was read, what Sarah read just a little while earlier, what happened first was Jesus' disciples are in this room. They have the doors locked. They're afraid of what's going to happen to them because Jesus has just been crucified. He's dead, and this is it, okay? And so they're looking everywhere for some idea of what they're going to do next, okay? And then it's in that situation where Jesus appeared to them and revealed himself to be risen from the dead. And so they then went and told Thomas, and Thomas is like, people don't rise from the dead. I'll believe it when I see it. See, he was just like them. Thomas wasn't worse than them. He was just like the rest of the disciples. He doubted it. He struggled with it. Those things just don't happen. And the reason why I find this actually to be encouraging that this takes place is because doubt happens to Christians. Doubt happens to Christians. And I still remember, this is something that I'm convinced that sometimes, I think some people believe or at least convince themselves that not everybody struggles. And I remember having a conversation with a member of our church once who told me, he said, I wish I could feel the gospel. I wish I could feel it. He's talking about experiencing it. And I wish that, he said, he's like, Pastor, you preach with such conviction, you believe this and you're convicted by this truth, and so you share it with people. I just wish I could be like that. And I wish I didn't have doubts. And I'm like, I'm not impervious to struggles. And I'll tell you, I believe with all my heart that Jesus died and rose for me, that Jesus is my Savior. I believe that with all my heart, but my heart is still prone to wander very easily sometimes. And I can give you an example. When we were out in Shenandoah with my family, we decided to go on a hiking trip, and it was a circuit. It was a little circle you go, and we were told that the waterfalls were really, really, really neat to check out there. And so we found a hiking path that the person at the place we were staying told me was easy. And so we took us a little bit to find it. We finally found it, and we were going to go check out some waterfalls and come back for lunch, have a little picnic. And so we started on our walk. It was about a mile. So mind you, it's me, my wife, my 9-year-old, my 6-year-old, and my 5-year-old. And we're walking. The path is you could drive a 4-wheeler on the path we started with. It was very flat. We go down. We get to the waterfall. Beautiful. Climbed up to the top. Climbed back down. I discovered some of the dangers, the treacherous nature of having a 5- and a 6-year-old on rocky paths. Everything was okay, though. We got to the bottom. It was beautiful. And I was thinking, okay, let's finish the circuit, okay? All right, I did an Ironman and all this kind of stuff, so I'm like, we're going to do this. We're going to make it happen. So we're going to keep going. And it's a circuit. So you just got to go around and come back, right? That easy. So you follow along the stream, and suddenly it's getting a little more rocky. You see more waterfalls. The kids are liking it. Megan's liking it. I'm liking it. This is really cool. And the path finally crosses the stream, and the path starts heading back up to where the car's parked. And I look at the sign, and it says 1.5 miles. Megan looks at me, she's like, we can do this, it'll be fine. Okay, so we go, we start walking up this path, up, not flat. And I didn't expect it to be flat. Okay, we're on a mountain. I got some common sense here, but we got like rocks and all sorts of things, and then I heard the thing that I was dreading. How much longer? Dad, I'm tired. And then the worst thing imaginable happened. My 5-year-old did this. Oh, sat down. I can't go any further. With over 1 mile left to go. I looked at Megan, I'm like, here we go. So I threw him on my back, and I gave him a piggyback. I'm going up, okay? And then my 6-year-old, Dad! So I carry him up, and then I come down. I have to get my other son, pick him up. You take a break there. Carry him up here. Okay, your turn. You're a lot heavier. And as this is going on, all right, mind you, I'm like, I am ruining our vacation right now. Well, this is supposed to be fun. See the sights, stand on the mountaintop. Woo, this is going to be awesome, wonderful vacation. And now I'm like destroying it. My wife's giving me the stink eye. My kids are like having the worst time imaginable. And then, this is how my sinful nature works. And I start thinking about coming back here and all the news that you guys are going to get this week. And I'm just like, and I'm thinking about what my family's going to be doing and moving, all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, are we going to be okay? What am I doing? I'm on the side of a mountain, Lord, and where are you in all this? And what I'm telling you is I was struggling. Struggling there. Trying to put on a good face for my family, but I was having a really hard time. And I want you to, do you ever have moments like this where you have moments in life that give you pause, that just make you stop and you're like, am I going to be okay? Can I do this? Do you have situations in your life right now where you don't know? Like you have a decision maybe too, where maybe you're considering a move, or you're considering moving to a different house, or maybe you considered taking a pay cut for a job to spend more time with your family, or maybe you're considering a new job opportunity, or maybe you've thought about tithing before and giving more of your gifts, but that's kind of hard, or maybe there's somebody that you love and yet they've hurt you really bad and you don't believe that they deserve to be forgiven, and so that's really hard and I really can't do that, or you need to reconcile with somebody and I've really hurt them bad and I don't think I deserve it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through this, and there's things maybe you're being asked to give up and I just don't know if I can do it, and you're just finding yourself in that moment where you kind of pause and you question a lot of things. You question yourself. If that's the case, know this. This is going to sound really simple, but the truth is the answer to doubt is Jesus. Am I going to be okay? Am I going to be all right? Jesus' answer to you, no matter what it is you're struggling with, is yes. You're going to be just fine. It's all good. You know what Jesus did when he appeared to Thomas and the rest of the disciples? You know what he said to them? He said, "Peace be with you." Do you know how powerful those words must have been? Where were the disciples when Jesus was dying in incredibly horrific fashion on a cross? Where were they? Nowhere. They left him. They abandoned him. They were struggling with doubts. This was it. They were gone. And what happens as soon as Jesus rises from the dead? What does he do? He appears to them and he says, "Peace be with you." He knew what they were struggling with. He knew it was in their hearts, and yet he restored that relationship with them. He forgave them. And you know that word peace? It is incredibly powerful. The word peace, a lot of times we think more of peace in terms of no conflict. I'm tired of the fighting. I just want peace in my life. That's a good understanding of that term. We want more peace in the world. But a more accurate biblical understanding of peace is completion, fulfillment, fullness, wholeness. And when Jesus said, "Peace be with you," what he was saying is you have everything you need. Everything is going to be all right. You just don't know it yet. And when I was hanging on that cross, you had no idea that everything was going to be all right. But guess what? The whole time I knew that it would. That's why I went to that cross, and that's why I rose again, so that everything would be just fine. That's how much I love you. And nothing would be the same for the disciples. You see, they could go anywhere, loudly preach the truth of Jesus anywhere, regardless of the consequences, because you know what? It's all good. I'm good. I'm going to be just fine. Jesus is risen. Because of Jesus, I could stand on that mountainside, my own struggles, and I could know we're going to be okay. You. And whatever you have going on in your life, whatever transitions you're going through, whatever struggles, whatever it is in your life, you can know that Jesus looks at you and he says, "Peace be with you." It's all good. You're going to be fine. Just keep your eyes on me. Shepherd Lakes as a congregation, I can look at you today and say, I'll be leaving in a few months. But you're going to be fine. Why? Because both Pastor Miles and I know that we're not ultimately in charge of the church. It's Jesus who is the head. And we set our eyes on him, it's all good. We're going to be fine. This congregation is going to be fine. So one of the greatest blessings here is we have Jesus at the center. And yet, even as we hear those words, we can still struggle. And you know one of the reasons why we still doubt? It's because we want to make gods of ourselves. I want to make a god of myself. So often. This is what happens when we're struggling, when we're going through our difficult times. You know what we do? We push God out of the equation and we assume we have all the right answers. We have underlying assumptions that we believe to be true, and so it's much easier to doubt God than to doubt ourselves. And you see, that's what Thomas did. Thomas had this underlying belief that people don't rise from the dead. God is incapable of miracles. Even though God created the entire world, even though he saw Jesus calm storms and raise the dead, no, that can't possibly happen. And because of the underlying assumption, he doubted God rather than doubting his own underlying assumptions. See? Push God out. I'm in charge. And this is why, as Jesus says, peace be with you. It's all good. You're going to be fine. He understands that there's still doubts, there's still struggles, and so he calls us to doubt our own assumptions. He calls us to, when we get in a rational mind, which is a good thing, gets in the way sometimes, it's like, dead people don't rise from the dead. So, and some of the things in the Bible I've never experienced before, so that probably means that stuff might not have happened, right? Really? Is God incapable of these things? If you're struggling with somebody you're called to forgive, and I just can't possibly do that because that person doesn't deserve forgiveness. Do you? I'm so bad. I hurt that person so much that there's no way we'll ever reconcile. Are you really unloved? Are you really worthless? Feelings, man, feelings take over my life, and feelings become facts. I feel like a wretched person, a bad husband, a bad wife, a bad friend, a bad son, bad daughter. I'm a horrible employer or employee. I feel that way all the time, so it must be true. Is it? See, God calls us to rest in the truth that everything's all good. Instead of doubting God, doubt your own assumptions. And then hear what he has to say. You know, when I was going up that hill, that mountain, carrying my kids, struggling with my own inner thought process, there were people that were coming down. And it was really actually very encouraging for me that some of those folks would say, look at me with pity in their eyes. It's not much further. It's going to be up there just a little bit. God does that for us. He does that for us. After we hear about that account from Thomas, this is what we hear. It says, these words are written, Scripture is given to us, Bible is given to us, so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. There are times in life, I'll tell you, where it's tempting to kind of sit down on that path and say, I can't go any further. You know what? Jesus takes you up on his shoulders. He says, I'll carry you a little bit. I'll take you. Can't do it on your own. I'll do it for you. And while he's carrying you, there's others around you that are encouraging you, saying, you know, it's going to be okay. The end is near. It's going to be all right. You just don't know it yet. And you know, this is what it means to be a part of the church. This is why I love Shepherd Lakes so much. Because here, we rest in the knowledge every single day that Jesus comes to us and says, peace be with you. It's all good. We just don't know it yet. We rest in the comfort knowing that we're not alone in our own doubts, but God invites us to doubt those underlying assumptions that we have. And then you know what we do? We rest in God's word together. We receive his grace. We receive the comfort that he can only give us. We rest in the fact that Jesus is the one carrying us through those difficult moments in life. And as we do, and as he does that for us, we turn to one another and we see others in this room who are struggling. And we encourage them as well. See, you're having a tough time. You're going through a bit of a tough stretch. It's okay. May not know it now, but you're all good. It's going to be fine. Why? Jesus is risen. Amen.